Well, this is pretty wild footage here. So the IDF just released helmet cam footage of a medevac operation in the Gaza Strip, start to finish. Not clear entirely when or where this was taken, but you can see the challenges of not just locating the casualty, but securing the area around where the wounded is, treating them on the spot, and then finding a way to get them out of the battlefield to a location where they can be effectively medevac. Now, again, not entirely clear where or when this operation took place, but this was footage that just came out earlier today. You can see there's a lot of things to see in this, right? Just the chaos of the modern battlefield. You can hear the gunfire in the distance. The fighting is still very much ongoing. And it's never clear. It's never a simple location where the casualties are taken and you can just simply move them from one location to the next and get them the appropriate treatment. Of course, this hard to tell if this was an IED or small arms fire. Again, they blur out the casualties, so we can't see. There we go, 5 injured, all conscious. Good news. You see them trying to organize all aspects of this, securing the area. One of the hardest things I think often goes unnoticed is when there's a casualty on the battlefield, you can't just run up and start treating right away. You need to secure the location and or move the casualty to a location where you can effectively treat them without yourself becoming a casualty. So hard to tell in this situation if they move the casualty here. It is relatively open, so it makes me think that maybe they just secured the location before treating. But they're going to move them out to a couple different. They're moving them out of this destroyed building, collapsed building, to effectively get them out of the battlefield. And they put this out alongside some really impressive stats. The IDF had an article titled "The Fastest Medical Evacuation Times in the World." Data on the IDF Medical Corps Technological Innovations in Battlefield Care. They say that right now, the average time for a senior medical practitioner to reach injured soldiers and provide treatment in the field is 1 to 4 minutes. So that's the important piece here. It's not necessarily getting the soldier off the battlefield or getting them to a hospital. It's when can they reach that next level of care. Sometimes that means pushing a surgeon forward. Other times that just means getting them off the battlefield very, very quickly to a level 2 or level 3 medical facility that has more advanced capabilities than maybe a small field hospital or forward aid point. A lot of times it's kind of a combination of both, and you'll see medics or surgeons, tied in with evac teams so they can start providing advanced care very, very early. Now, so far, the IDF says they've conducted approximately 300 whole blood transfusions on the battlefield. 150 soldiers have been saved due to the use of tourniquets so far in this fighting. The average evacuation time in the Gaza Strip from the moment of injury to the arrival at the hospital is 51 minutes by helicopter, which is actually a little bit slower than I would have expected. By vehicle, approximately 61 minutes. And they say so far 7,400 injured soldiers have been treated. You know, this is similar to the situation the U.S. found ourselves in Iraq and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, you end up getting pretty good at this when there's a lot of practice to be had of evacuating casualties off the battlefield, treating them on the spot, and getting them to the appropriate care and saving those lives. So it's the kind of thing that you need to practice, and we do practice. All militaries practice, but as the IDF is operating in the Gaza Strip, they have very real-time experience of making this happen, and from everything we can tell, they're getting better and better at that process, saving a lot of lives as they go. Now, some additional news here. We just have reports of a Houthi missile attack into Israel. We've got some footage showing some of that. This was, we did see the IDF called this out early on, said they've detected a Houthi missile launch coming from Yemen. It's like every day or a couple times a day now this is happening, while the Houthis have kind of eased up on their strikes and stopped their strikes against U.S. Military and commercial vessels in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. They've kind of shifted all focus towards Israel. So Israel did sound the alert sirens. People were able to take cover. And then eventually they say this missile was intercepted. Houthis confirmed having launched this, actually put out their own propaganda video like very quickly. So they got some of the footage from Israel, spliced it in here. And they said they carried out a qualitative military operation targeting the Ben Gurion airport. Their plan here is to conduct an air and sea blockade of Israel. The sea blockade they're only implementing in the Red Sea, saying no ships that are Israeli or affiliated with Israel in any way are going to pass through, but they're also trying to fire enough missiles at the Ben Gurion airport to make it to where a lot of airlines have no intention of flying in or out of that airport, which it does seem like it's had some effect, but the airport is still in operation. Now, shifting to some operations on the ground, we have some Hamas footage here I'm going to share in a minute showing their view of the battlefield as they're carrying out attacks throughout the Gaza Strip. But sticking with the IDF here, they put out a statement earlier today saying that last week, Jasser Hussein Ali Shameh was eliminated. We've got his graphic showing here. They say he was responsible for raising funds for Hamas's military wing and previously served as a battalion commander in Hamas's Gaza brigade. They say since the beginning of the war, Shameh was responsible for the transfer of tens of millions of dollars to Hamas. These funds were used for the reinforcement of their military wing, the payment of terrorist salaries, and funding the terrorist organization as a whole. The IDF says over the past 2 days, they've struck over 130 terror targets belonging to Hamas in Gaza. This includes surface-to-surface rocket launchers, terrorist facilities, military structures, operational apartments from which Hamas conducted attacks against IDF troops. Now, on that note, included in this roll-up was yesterday's attack against the European hospital, or the tunnels underneath the European hospital. We shared some footage of that a couple days ago. Pretty significant strike. Mohammed Sinwar, the brother of Yahya Sinwar, the late Yahya Sinwar, having been targeted and eliminated by the IDF. He was the former leader of Hamas. Mohammed Sinwar is the new leader of Hamas. He appears to have been the target, but we have no further information at this point as to who was killed in that strike and if Sinwar was actually there. Now, turning over to some of this Hamas footage real quick, something I wanted to show here was some technology they've been using throughout. We're not getting a lot of it shown in footage. But first off, showing again very few structures continuing to stand in the Gaza Strip, and you see Hamas popping out of what appears to be a residential facility here, a tunnel underneath, immediately opening fire on the IDF forces in the area. This is one of the arguments being used as to why all the buildings are getting turned to rubble, because every time the IDF goes into one, there's either IEDs, we'll show you one here in a second, or there's tunnels facilitating Hamas's movement from one fighting position to another. Now, in this specific location, you can see they're back underground. It looks like they tried to lure, there you go, in the tunnel, firing out the top, trying to lure the IDF in on the top of the screen there, and right here, you'll see there's the drone, Israeli drone coming in. We've got a backup camera detached from a vehicle that Hamas has been using. There's the drone trying to see what it can find. It does not see the camera, so they send it, or the camera or the IED, so they send in the dog. This is the second phase. It appears the dog does not find the IED either. This is a common tactic being used by Israel as these buildings have become more and more seeded with IEDs. So then the personnel move in, the troops move in, and it's at this point that Hamas, down in the tunnel below this facility now, has lured them in, and they detonate the IED. And it shows the Hamas fighters here in the tunnel waiting for that moment, using the backup camera as their time to strike. So again, you're seeing an example as they run away here, seeing an example of some of the Hamas tactics, firing to lure the IDF soldiers in. If the building isn't just completely leveled, they move in with a drone, then with a dog, then with soldiers. And the Hamas guys there are waiting for the soldiers to come in before detonating the IED. It's pretty brutal. Smart, adaptive on Hamas's part, and you can see again why we're seeing more and more just wholesale destruction of some of these buildings, rather than risking soldiers going in and finding out that it was a trap. IED detonates, kills 1, 2, 3, or more. Now, alongside all of this, we are seeing what appears to be, and some are arguing, might be a bit of a split between U.S. and Israel right now as it relates to some of these policies in the region and in the Gaza Strip. The Times of Israel earlier today reported that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told reporters that he is troubled by the humanitarian situation in Gaza amid a nearly 2.5-month-long Israeli aid blockade, adding that he spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu earlier today. They say he doesn't specify, though, whether he raised the issue during the call, and he insisted that the U.S. is not immune to the suffering of the people in Gaza, where no humanitarian aid has reached since March 1st. They say the top U.S. diplomat's comments did not go as far as to expressly criticize Israel, but they seem to be moving in that direction after Trump officials had long exclusively blamed Hamas for the humanitarian crisis. Now, I think if you read between the lines here, we are seeing a bit of a shift. It's hard to tell exactly what that looks like, but a couple things are happening in the last week or so that are pretty notable. First off, we got this statement from Rubio talking about their concern about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Haven't heard much of that from this administration, at all. So that's notable. President Trump is currently on a trip through the Middle East. He is not going to Israel. All right, so he's already been to, Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, maybe some others. Not Israel, right? Pretty significant U.S. ally. He's passing right by. On top of that, during this trip to the Middle East, President Trump announced that he's removing sanctions on Syria, and that was against the desire of Netanyahu. He spoke with Netanyahu, who didn't want that to happen. He's doing it anyways. And then last week, the U.S., President Trump again, announced a ceasefire with the Houthis. That also, by all accounts, was caught a lot of Israelis off guard. There had not necessarily been a lot of communication there. In fact, Israel had just wrapped up carrying out airstrikes against the Houthis when they got word that the United States was no longer going to be striking that organization in Yemen. On top of all of that, we've got kind of the big elephant in the room. The U.S. is continuing nuclear talks, nuclear negotiations with Iran, and there's a lot of pushback from the pro-Israel side and the folks inside of Israel wanting the U.S. to take a harder stance. And right now what we're seeing in terms of all the information coming out of those talks is this is looking an awful lot like the previous Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, the Obama nuclear deal that President Trump withdrew from. And there's a lot of hardliners, a lot of people in Israel as well that don't like that and want to see a harder stance taken. So between Syria, the Houthis, Hamas in Gaza, Iran, we're seeing a bit of a split here between the United States and Israel, but it's hard to tell if there's actually something there or if this is trying to read too much into just a lot of different things happening at once. But nonetheless, I'll link a couple of these sources in the description below, especially the video and stats to the IDF EVAC. I think that's really interesting information. But nonetheless, that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.